I have to do this. No matter how painful it is to me. No matter how useless it might seem at the moment. I have to believe that there's at least an infinitesimal chance that somebody someday might soon will find this recording. And if they do, I hope they share my story. Our story about what happened to the USS Gladstone. I can only dream that my words will travel far and wide across the universe. That all our habited planets, every single space station, and especially every other spaceship that is naively traveling around space thinking that we are safe and alone. I hope they'll hear my warning. And maybe, just maybe, it'll save them from the tragic ending that this ship had to endure. My name is Therese Kelly. I am the co-pilot of the USS Cladstone, and I believe I will be assassinated in the following minutes. All of my crew is dead. If there's someone still alive on the hallways of this ship, then they must be running for their lives. And they should know by now, like me, that we are doomed. There's no salvation for us. This is the end. The ship's system is corrupted, and there's no way to escape. I'm locked inside the pilot's cabin. I've barricaded myself inside here, and I'm recording my last message under the cold blue glow of the emergency lights. I hope you can hear me. I know that the end is anything but quiet. Every now and then, I can still hear someone cry out in agony. The alarms give a last attempt at blaring around the ship. Someone or something trying to break into this room. And I can hear the Gladstone breaking down all around me. The thing is, we are not alone on our ship. Something infiltrated our ship. And here's the story of how it happened. Maybe it'll save another crew from making the same mistake. I know it's too late for us anyway. Everything started, well, it feels like a lifetime ago, but really, it could have been more than a couple of hours since we received the distress signal. The USS Gladstone works as a transport spaceship. This means we were moving a large shipment of assorted construction materials from one planet, Axo, to a distant space station, the Emerald 7. Our crew was composed of the captain, Charlie Fletcher, 2 engineers, Caleb and Victoria, and me, the co-pilot. Our mission was long, but relatively simple, and we weren't new on the job, so none of us was scared. Even in the middle of the journey when there was absolutely nothing. No signs of life. Nothing but empty space all around us, for as far as our radars could see. Sometimes, moving through space resembled swimming in freezing cold waters with your eyes closed and nothing to guide you but trust. Trust that you were going steadily forward in one direction. For rookies, this can be a terrifying experience. The absolute loneliness and the impossibility of receiving any kind of help. This makes people lose their minds. But we weren't alone. Right there, in the middle of nowhere, our radars caught a distress signal. I remember feeling my heart skip a beat when I saw the warning on our screens. I alerted our captain, but the screens didn't lie. We weren't close enough to see exactly what was sending the signal. I didn't feel great about having to shift our course just to check, but this wasn't completely an unusual circumstance. Traveling through space was common enough to run into company and even sometimes offer a hand to a smaller ship in need. Everyone ran out of fuel now and then. But as soon as we were close enough to contact the ship that sent the signal, we were soon forced to realize that this was so much more than a small mishap. There was something terribly wrong with that ship. I remember the captain saying, "It's an older model, compact and fast, a true classic. I used to pilot one like it, not for large shipments like ours, but just limited groups of people or even just one very rich and important person that can afford it." We moved slowly toward the ship adrift in the middle of nowhere. Our radars only showed one small dot surrounded by the distress signal. When we were close enough, Captain Fletcher opened up the communication channels, but he didn't have a chance to speak before our speakers burst with the sounds coming from the strange ship. "Help! Please! This is the USS Callaghan! I'm calling any and all nearby ships and..." The woman's message kept getting interrupted by some kind of static. We could only grasp certain words like fuel, danger, don't, alone, forgive me. It was the strangest thing I had ever heard. The captain and I were frozen for a few seconds. I can't say with certainty what passed through his mind, but personally I was wondering what event could cause that strange static. And why would a person sending a distress signal, why would they ask for forgiveness at the end of the message? We were shocked out of our moment of hesitation by the doors behind us opening up. Our engineers on board were standing there with confused frowns on their faces. Victoria asked us, "Did we change course? What's going on?" I can't be sure, but I have a feeling that one look at our crew and imagining that other people just like us could be trapped in that ship adrift in the middle of space. That's what made our captain make up his mind. "We received a distress signal from a spaceship nearby," he informed the two newcomers. "Their communication system is failing, so we must investigate closer. I'll establish a connection between both ships and we'll take a look. Make sure everyone is safe and provide them with fuel, repair pieces, or transport if necessary. Sound good?" Caleb and Victoria agreed immediately, and we all got to work. But Jesus Christ, it hurts just thinking about it. It's all a mess in my head. One minute we were calculating distances and carefully piloting the ship. Then we were all running for our lives and bleeding out in agony. The spacecraft that used to be a second home somehow turned into a living hell. I can't forget our last red flag before it was too late to turn back around. The captain and I were still in the cabin while Caleb and Victoria waited for us at the boarding gates. We were moments away from connecting our ship with the smaller one, when I pointed out some small detail that was eating me alive. "Captain," I said, "that ship, it shows levels of heat that are almost non-existent." I hoped he understood my words. I prayed he wouldn't make me say out loud what I was thinking, which was that this strange ship looked completely dead, as if nothing inside had been producing heat for a while now. Unfortunately, the captain shook his head and told me, "Therese, someone sent that message with the distress signal. We might be on time to save her. Even if we're not, even if all we can do is bring her body home, then it's the least we can do. We're going in." I didn't put up a fight. I nodded and I worked along with him to close the distance between both ships. And then, when we were right in place, he activated the bridge between the ships. That's when all hell broke loose. Our screen displayed 2 messages at the same time. Successful connection and security warning. Red and angry alarms blared on our ship, and then immediately stopped. Went on again, and stopped. The effect was maddening. The lights weren't too far behind. All the lights of the ship started flickering, and this onslaught of energy was damaging the infrastructure, with lights overheating, hissing, and starting to explode in several places. But I couldn't even find out more information, because the screens in front of us were going crazy too. The radars stopped working, the screens turned on and off again, and all the signals were wrong. It said we didn't have fuel, we didn't have oxygen, and then we were all good again. The gates were open, we were on fire, and everything was perfectly fine again. The captain and I rushed to perform every emergency strategy in the book. We entered every code and pushed every red button that could get our ship stable again. We were on the edge of our seats expecting something worse to happen, knowing that an overworked system could be fatal. But then, after the most stressful minutes of my life, we managed to regain some semblance of control. Or so we thought. I couldn't trust any message displayed on our screen anymore. Did we really have that much fuel before? How could I be sure the oxygen wasn't running out? My sense of safety was thrown out the window. Have you ever had your own home betray your trust? In a place where there's no one to offer help, no neighbors, not even a sidewalk to run through to escape your nightmare. I had to think quickly. "Captain, we have to break the connection with that ship. We have to take back the bridge," I said, already starting to work on it. "But the crew of that ship," the captain sighed gravely, and I have to highlight this. I have to say that he tried his hardest to do what he believed was right and help as many people as he could. But this was out of our hands. Charlie. I called him by his name, as a friend, desperate to get him to listen to me, and it worked. Charlie focused back on the controllers and started working with me, except that a second later he blurted out, I can't. I was about to launch a speech about protecting ourselves to be able to help anybody else, but he interrupted me and said, "No, Therese, I can't close the bridge. The system won't let me." I gasped a little and scrambled for the controls ahead of me just to confirm my fears. "We can't. The gates are already open," I said. Without needing to say another word, we leapt from our seats and started running toward the boarding station where our crew would be waiting for us. I was starting to sweat, and I had chills. But I remember thinking maybe this was a good thing. If we didn't order to open up the gates, then someone must have done it from the other ship. So someone must be alive, and we would be able to rescue someone in need. But as soon as we reached the gates, all my optimism was snuffed out like a candle. Caleb and Victoria were standing there frozen, staring at the open gates between our ship and the other. The bridge between the ships was barely illuminated by our lights, but beyond that, the other ship was pitch black, with not a single light coming from its depths. It looked worse than dead. It looked like a black hole waiting to swallow each one of us. Nobody said anything. We didn't know how to react in front of that completely strange sight. In that moment of silence, we heard it. Footsteps. Somebody was walking toward us, slowly dragging their feet, limping out of their ship and onto the bridge. A few seconds later, we finally saw them. At first, they were just a vague silhouette. It was a haunting image, like seeing yourself in a cracked and smoky mirror. This stranger wore a uniform just like ours, which made me relax momentarily. We really made it. We managed to rescue a colleague in need. "Hello, my name is Charlie Fletcher, captain of the USS Cladstone." Charlie introduced himself with a loud but polite tone. He was authoritative, but kind. He was trying to earn the person's trust without scaring them at the first sight of a group of strangers. We had no idea what this poor individual had gone through until we found them. We heard your distress signal and have come to help. Can you tell us if there's anyone else still on your ship? What's your emergency and how can we help you? I guarantee... Oh God. We never even got to hear Charlie's stupid promise. He was interrupted. It was the same voice from the distress signal. But, I mean, the exact same voice. Word by word. Even the static that blocked some of the message. Like an identical recording. "Help! Please! This is the USS Callaghan! I'm calling any and all nearby ships and...
Fuel! Danger! Don't!
And this was followed by the worst sound I had ever heard. The stranger limped forward and reached the spot on the bridge where our lights illuminated their spacesuit. That's when we finally noticed the blood staining most of it. Jesus Christ, the sight of it was like a punch to the throat. We gasped and flinched away, our eyes locked onto the deep crimson coating the neck of the suit, trailing down and spreading around the stomach. The whole thing looked ragged and torn. The arms hung limp to the sides, and one leg was twisted in a completely impossible direction. The foot turned all the way around. But fuck those details. In a second, nothing mattered but that horrifying sound. It was a guttural, loud, and terrifying roar from a great beast breaking out of a cave, creaking stones and bones and soil to take over the world. And it was coming directly from that stranger standing up a few feet away from us. We were temporarily frozen, unable to do much but take careful steps backward. Only Victoria misstepped and she fell down to the floor, where she remained shocked and staring with parted lips at the scene in front of us. When the roar ceased, we were forced to observe the real source of it. The stranger took another step forward. We took 2 steps backward. The helmet trembled. It wasn't transparent like it should have been. It was impossible to see through. And I almost threw up at the realization that it must have been covered entirely with blood. But not the outside. The blood came from inside the suit. That's when all hell broke loose. The helmet cracked and exploded into pieces. All of us screamed, and the head of the monster raised from the depths of that suit. There wasn't a human there at all. If there ever was a person inside that suit, an innocent soul whose blood was now smeared all over it, they were dead and gone by now. All that was left was that pale, wet, grotesque mass of pink skin like a worm crawling out of the suit. And then the beast opened its mouth. God damn it, it was the most terrifying thing imaginable for me. It had a jaw of probably more than 1 foot deep, covered in rows upon rows of sharp teeth, steel-stained with remnants of human flesh between them. We didn't need another sign. The spell was broken. We jumped into action. We all started running as fast as we could, screaming as loud as humanly possible, knowing we had stumbled into the worst possible scenario. I could feel myself sweating and my muscles and throat burning already. But you know what they say, curiosity killed the cat. I needed a second glance at that creature. I needed to know if it was following us, if it would just limp its way toward us as it did before. I should have known I wouldn't have been able to go on after seeing what was behind me. After she fell down, Victoria managed to stand up and start running just like the rest of us. But that still left her a few steps behind, vulnerable and the perfect prey. I turned around just in time to see the creature slither out of the spacesuit, dripping blood everywhere. But as soon as I noticed how fast this giant bloodied worm with razor-sharp teeth moved, I froze again. That thing rushed on the floor of our spaceship faster than any snake. It leapt from the ground and attacked Victoria. The monster's jaw slammed shut on her waist, and she wailed so loud, so painfully. I screamed along with her at the sight of blood splattering the hallways, the sound of her little bones crushed under the mandibles of this beast. This was worse than a nightmare. This couldn't be fucking possible. Then the monster started to chew, and I had to watch as my dear friend was split in two. Her legs fell limp to one side as she lost consciousness. But the beast was not done with her. It continued to chew up her torso, swallowing her in bits and pieces at a revolting speed. I started to sway on my feet, undoubtedly about to throw up or faint. I would have been lucky to die on the spot of a heart attack. That would have saved me much more suffering. But Charlie reached out to me, grabbed my arm just in time, and quickly dragged me away before I had to see that horrible creature eat Victoria's head. We started running as fast as we could, stumbling down the hallways of our corrupted home. Nothing was right anymore. Nothing was safe. I was screaming. I remember screaming Caleb and Victoria's names.
Victoria!
Knowing we were separated and not able to accept the fact that one of them was dead already. The alarms resumed their cry all over the ship. We had no way to know if Caleb had activated them from somewhere, or if this was part of the virus that had attacked our system as soon as we connected with this infected ship. All we knew were red lights, loud sounds, the sprinklers on the ceiling coming to life without warning or reason, and finally the worst news imaginable. Charlie had led me to the escape pods of the ship. But we weren't the only ones there. There were 4 escape shuttles attached to the ship, but we didn't even get to activate them. We approached them slowly because from the windows of the doors, we could see what lay beyond. About half a dozen more of those abominable creatures were currently trying to break into the escape pods by breaking the glass on the front. They slammed their reddish, meaty heads on the glass with extreme fury, and one of them had succeeded in breaking through. It was only a matter of time before the others followed suit, knocked down the doors, and entered our ship. We were being invaded, and our odds of making it through this were painfully slim. "Our suits!" I said out loud, bringing Charlie's attention to the suits and helmets lining up the wall in front of the escape pods. We had to accept the fact that sooner rather than later these monsters would break into our ship one way or another, and we had to protect ourselves in any way possible. We got dressed in record time under the pressure of these giant beasts slamming their gross bodies against our ship, trying to get in. When Charlie and I were dressed, we started running again, this time returning toward the pilot's cabin. But we were soon stopped. We were very soon stopped. And when I say stopped, I mean broke down and fell down to my knees, crying at the top of my lungs. In front of us lay the lifeless body of Caleb. Another dead friend. Another innocent person devoured by unexplainable monsters. Another crime scene. This was a massacre. This was pure carnage. The worst part was that we had to fucking guess that this was Caleb. That body lying in a pool of blood didn't even have a head. It was missing an arm and most of its torso. God, I was shaking. I was losing my mind. And my last living friend, the captain of the USS Gladstone, the man that lost everything trying to save a stranger. He was puking his guts out in a corner. All things considered, Charlie recovered slightly faster than me and helped me back on my feet. He looked me in the eyes and put into words our last resource. He told me, "Therese, we have to get to our cabin now. If we break the connection with that ship and fly as fast as our engine can take us, maybe we'll find help in time." I nodded and smiled at him. We had gone through a lot together, even before this tragedy, but I was smart enough to know that his plan was very unlikely to succeed. I couldn't help myself. Running could wait. I had to share one last hug with him before we ended up just like our friends did. We wrapped our arms around each other and allowed ourselves to hold on tightly for 1 minute while our ship collapsed around us under the weight of an invasive species of monsters. We didn't know what they were or how they took over that poor ship adrift in space, but we could afford to say goodbye to one last person. With tears streaming down my face and Charlie's hand in mine, we started running once more. We were almost there. I could almost feel my hands grasping the controls of our last chance. But when we got there, when we reached the hallway that led toward the pilot's cabin, we weren't the only ones there. One of the monsters, probably the first one, even bigger now and still covered in the blood of my friends, was standing there in its gruesome form of massive human-eater worm. It was sniffing the air blindly and apparently caught the scent of our desperate fear. It started groaning loudly, preparing to jump at us, just like I seen it attack Victoria. Charlie. Charlie squeezed my hand and told me, "You have to send a distress signal." I started to protest, knowing exactly what he was trying to say, but he was unrelenting as he said his last words. "Therese, it was an honor to work with you." The last thing I saw of Charlie Fletcher, captain of the USS Cladwell, was the moment that he let go of my hand and started running toward the monster ahead of us. He had zero chance to even harm that creature, but in the seconds that it would take the monster to break him into pieces or swallow him whole, I was able to run by myself into the pilot's cabin. My heart was breaking. My mind was swimming with the most horrifying images that I never would have imagined could happen, and I was all alone. I am all alone. I immediately tried to lock the door, of course, but I was cruelly reminded that the Gladstone system had broken down as soon as we connected with the infected ship. The door wasn't listening. The system couldn't block any door, and I couldn't break out of the connection with the other ship. I couldn't do shit. I was doomed. All this running, and all the sacrifice were for nothing. I completely lost my mind then. I did whatever I could to block the door. I tore into the control panel on the side. I destroyed it so that the door would stop functioning at all. There was no way in and no way out. But still, the sounds, the alarms, the roaring, the echo of Charlie's last scream. And when I turned around, I was barely surprised that the sounds of heavy knocking trying to break into the cabin didn't come exclusively from the door. 3 of the monsters were currently slithering on the surface of our glass panel with a view of the endless and unforgiving universe ahead of me. This is the end. The system is down. The ship is destroyed. And I have nothing else left to do but leave this message. I mean, maybe someone will hear it. Maybe my warning will prevent other people from trying to help abandoned ships that are beyond all hope. At the very least, I hope I'll convince you that instead of trying to save me, you'll set this whole thing on fire and end this tragedy once and for all. Hey Creepypasta fans, it's Teresa. Thanks for listening. To connect and support us, make sure to check out our Discord and Patreon links in the description. And remember, stay cosmic.